Hi, this is Praios and I'm a professional gambler. Today we will take a look at another video from Galfond. It will be the top 5 lessons from my mental coach games. I don't think very highly of mental coaches, and I think you have to you don't have to, but you can deal with the psychological thing or the psychological side of poker yourself. But to be honest, I also don't know much about it, as I never had a lesson with a coach. And maybe Galfond can convince us otherwise in this video. I'm very excited to see what it's about, as I never took anything of that. And yeah, let's see what he learned and what his lessons are.
Yeah, so I've had two mental game coaches throughout my career. Tommy Angelo first, and I started working with him back in 2006. And then more recently, I worked with Elliot Rowe for several years.
I think the first one is quite popular and famous, but yeah, I could be wrong.
They're both fantastic. They're both actually very different in what they teach. Basically, Tommy teaches, parts of how to be professional from his own lived experience and how to be zen about poker as a whole, because it's something he has more or less achieved. Elliot is a lot more of, he's two things. He's a hypnotherapist.
I personally think that, you could and should figure it out on yourself, because in the end, it's you who has to make sure that you are in the right mental state, and the guy who can always help you the most is yourself, in my mind, and you should not rely on other people if possible.
And performance coach. I think he's also kind of like if you were running a business and you had an executive coach, he's something like that. So the advice is not as general as it is very specific to what you're dealing with. Recently, I recorded a video. This was top 5 bits of advice I'd gotten. And my one favorite one from Tommy that really stuck out, which I'm not going to put in this again because it's kind of cheating you out of one of your top 5, but I have to mention because it's so good, is basically a lesson in quitting and a mindset shift in quitting. I'm not going to go over the whole thing again, but you can check out the other video and you'll see it there. So for Tommy, I'm going to go, this is one that he actually didn't teach me directly. He wrote an article about it called Reciprocality. If you play a hand a certain way, and your opponent would play the hand the same way if roles were reversed, and you would play their hand the same way, they would play your hand the same way, you've gained no money. So yes, you might have gotten aces and they might have had kings, and you might have gotten all in pre-flop, and you might have won $2,000 at 5-10 no limit. But in reality, nobody gained an edge because you both played it the way you would have played in each other's shoes.
I think that's probably true for like 90-95% of hands that pros play against each other, because a lot of things are just standard and can be done on autopilot once you reach a certain level of gameplay. And you really need to think about only 5 or 10% of things.
So the concept of reciprocality is that all edges come from you doing something better than what your opponent would have done in your shoes. So the way this applies is it helped get me to stop thinking about, it helped me stop being so focused on the exact situation and result of the hand that I'm in. And it helped me not worry as much about, I lost this big pot with set over set, or,
To be honest, this advice helped me not at all. It's just, it's a concept, but it's not helping you mentally in any shape or form, in my opinion.
I bluffed here and ran into the nuts, whatever the case may be, because I can think about in terms of kind of expected value and reciprocality of, if my opponent had middle set there, they also would have gone broke. So I didn't actually lose any money there. I really like that approach. It's really just the concept of expected value and your earn. But
this is also called a cooler. These are the spots where you're supposed to go broke, and it's just pure luck if you're on the bad end of the result or on the good end. Obviously, in the end, it should all even out. So you have some coolers in your favor and some against you. And in the end, it's like statistic works. You should have an equal amount of bad and good luck. And this is not true for a few hands, but if you play enough hands, These are for PLO hundreds of thousands of hands. Luck should not be a factor anymore at some point.
Very eloquent and easy to understand way. So I've always liked that. So I worked with Elliot now. So we launched a course of his Run It Once, and I took that course. And this is something I actually learned mostly through the course and then talking with him a little bit. When No Limit Hold'em Solvers came out, I was playing Pot Limit Omaha. I didn't play No Limit Hold'em, so I never used them. Then Pot Limit Omaha Solvers came out. And at that point, I was still playing, but for the first year or two, I didn't touch them. I wasn't that interested, or thought that I wasn't that interested. I was still, winning and doing well. And then I started to get more involved in my business in Run It Once training and Run It Once poker, and kind of actually turned into a full-time job. And so I took some time away from poker, and I was kind of playing very part-time. I realized back in 2019, through talking to Elliot and through doing his course, there's an exercise where you write out some things that you wish you could do better. My example in this case, I wish I would sit down and study with solvers, but I hadn't done it. And so it asks you to go through, why it is that you haven't done it, and kind of what is your fear. And I realized that my fear was, I've never been much of a studier. I was not a great student because I didn't do my homework. I didn't study, and I never developed good study habits. Even throughout my poker career, I studied a lot less than my opponents. And so I had this fear of trying and failing, essentially. So trying to study the solver and realizing I couldn't retain the information. I couldn't do it as well as my opponents. And I just I
also wonder why they are showing, an L solvers, so No Limit Hold'em, while he is like a PLO specialist and probably not uses them at all or very little and compared to PLO ones.
I was afraid of learning that, maybe my poker career as I knew it, competing at the highest levels, was over. He took me through the exercise of, there's an acronym for it, I don't remember, but basically you write out what's the worst case scenario thing that would happen. I start to study, I'm just not getting it. I'm having a really hard time processing it and blah, blah, blah. And then he asks, well, what would you do?
So basically, the issue is that he is, how to phrase it, that he is probably intelligent enough, but he's lazy as fuck. And that's why he needs coaches to tell him that.
That happened. Essentially, you go through this exercise and simulate going through your worst fear in that situation, and simulate, what would happen? What would I do? What might happen next? What are some other outcomes? It just made me realize that first of all, that I was afraid to study with solvers. And second of all, that I should go for it. And if it went as badly as I feared, then so be it. I knew what I would do next. I knew I'd be okay. And that actually led me to studying with solvers and actually competing at very high levels in the Galfond challenges against top players and doing well. So the number 3, also from Elliot now. Elliot sometimes runs these group retreats of sorts. And this was, I think, the first one he did. It was here in Vegas, though. Essentially, this exercise, you get up in what he calls the hot seat and talk about whatever is kind of on your mind right now, that kind of your biggest hurdle. And then not only will he talk you through it, but other people who are there in some similar careers, some different, will offer their advice or ask you questions. What I was going through, I was talking a lot about challenges I was facing with the business. In the back and forth, I started talking about playing poker. And
I also wonder how he actually did with Run It Once, but I think there's not Run It Once. How is it called? Run It Once is his coaching site, which probably does well, but his poker site, I think it's also Run It Once Poker. Or how is it called? I don't know how. Out of the top of my head, I forgot how it's called. I think it's Run It Once Poker, but not sure. How profitable it actually was. I think it probably was a waste of time and money, because he started a poker site at the worst point where US guys were not allowed to play anymore, and it wasn't booming anymore. It was on a downswing, and it sort of still is. And regulations getting harsher and harsher in lands, and countries get fences regulatory about their around their country and stuff. And yeah, I think I always thought that this was a very bad decision, but I don't know, as I don't know the numbers. It would be very interesting. We would make a video about this, but this also has nothing to do with the psychology.
I missed playing poker. And everybody in the room, Elliot included, essentially their feedback to me was, you were talking about the business and it sounded really hard. It sounded like you were struggling. It sounded like you were not enjoying yourself. And then you started talking about poker and you lit up. And it was clear that poker to you is something that business is not. It's not about what potentially could lead to more success financially or what you think you should be doing. The fact of the matter is that you love to play poker. There's no way around that. And so it was actually the combination of these two things from Elliot. I made the decision from there to go from full-time working on the business to near full-time for a little while, at least playing poker.
I think you don't need a coach to realize this. This is kind of obvious. Also, a good friend or his wife or whatever could have told him that. Maybe that's not an authority and this advice would not have been taken, but yeah, everybody can see that, and it's kind of obvious. You don't need an overpaid guy to tell you obvious stuff, which you should be able to figure out on your own too.
And very part-time on the business and delegating a lot of my tasks to other people. And this is what led to eventually the idea of the Galfond Challenge, where I played against top players in Heads Up PLO and some of the matches on Run It Once, so we could promote the business as well. Really,
So Run It Once, it's called.
kind of went from kind of thinking that, you know what, I had my time as a top player and it was really fun and I loved it, but I might be done with that. I might never be a top player again because the game has changed. Going from thinking that to actually becoming a top player again, which meant a lot to me, not only, financially, but emotionally. It's an accomplishment that I'm really proud of and made me really happy. And so both of those kind of breakthroughs together led to that and had a big impact on my life. Nothing else stands out from Elliot like those two. And even nothing else from Tommy stands out like those two, because like I said, Tommy's are more realizations about the world and approaches he takes to poker. Yeah, one lesson that Tommy taught me is that everything has an impact on your edge, and that's actually something you can take advantage of, or that's actually something you can use to your advantage. So the example I think of is Tommy would always come to World Series of Poker during the summer, and Tommy was a cash game player. He didn't play any tournaments, but he loved to play cash games in the afternoons and evenings when the tournaments were running, because he would just be there playing his cash game in his normal mood. And a lot of people would play a tournament, they would bust out.
It also sounds like a great spot to be in, because a lot of recreationals will bust out early. And the pros usually are still in the tourney. So this seems to be a great spot to be in the cash games, because only the recreationals who cannot afford the tourney buy-in, if it's a high one, or the recreation, or like the fun players who don't want to play a tourney or don't enjoy it, will be sitting in there, and I expect the edge to be a lot larger than normal. But yeah, let's see what this leads us to.
Out of the tournament, and they would go head over to the cash games, because that's what you do. If you're a poker player, you don't have another tournament to play, you go play cash games. He was just there in his normal state, and all of these players were coming from having just had an upsetting loss into his...
Yeah, I mean, this is only true for recreational players, because a pro should not make such a big impact on him. He just busted from a tournament. I mean, he usually plays like tons of tournaments in a year, and a single result should not matter. But the only thing that matters is that you laid the best you can and close to optimal and make those good decisions, and everything else is just results are just results, and luck is such a huge factor in the short run, so that you should not be upset if you bust, if you did nothing wrong, I will want to say. So luck should not make you, or bad luck should not make you angry.
This game right there. And so they're already coming.
And I know this, although I'm not a mental coach and I never had one.
Coming in tilted in some capacity. Maybe some don't mind that much. Maybe some are really upset. Maybe some are just, slightly off balance and are going to, fall all the way over. But he's gaining an edge. Again, reciprocality. He's playing with no emotional baggage coming from tournaments, and these players are joining the table at a pretty bad time to play. Now, a lot of these players, just they're pros, they're still, favorites in the game, but he's getting an edge just by not having just dealt with a loss. And there are so many of these things that come up in poker where, with the concept of reciprocality, not just in terms of how...
Yeah, I doubt that this has a huge effect on good pros when they go to the cash game from the tourney after busting.
Hands are played, but in terms of how much preparation you've done, how much sleep you've gotten, what kind of mood you're in, there are a lot of ways to gain an edge, because if your opponent's
all the things mentioned are also kind of obvious, and I don't really get the point. You don't need a mental coach to figure this out.
Tired and you're not, that's an edge. If your opponent's upset and you're not, that's an edge. And then the last one, I never use this, but I kind of wanted to. So I've never used this because I have too much trouble. It's not really lying, but lying. But it's a really funny tactic that he uses that I would really like to start using. So basically, when he's playing live poker, a lot of times after a hand, you'll bet the river, your opponent will fold, and they'll be like, "Did you make a flush?" Or, "You're bluffing, weren't you? You probably had a missed straight draw." First of all, it's just kind of annoying because you're not going to tell them and you don't want to deal with it. And second of all, if you do start to engage in that and you do tell them, you're actually losing an edge because you're giving them information for free. Now, there's a counter argument.
Not sure if this is actually true, because you could say whatever you want and it's up to the other guy to believe you or not. And you could lie, but you don't need to. So I'm not sure to which extent this is true.
To this, which is like, in this conversation, you can get information from them about what they folded and how they think about the game. But anyways, it's still like a kind of something that can wear on you if you're playing a lot. And so what Tommy does is whatever they ask him, he just says yes. "Oh, did you make a flush?" "Yep." And then sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, did you make a flush?" And he'll be like, "Yep." And they'll ask him another question. Sometimes they'll ask a question that kind of isn't congruent with the first, and he says "yep" again, and then they're confused because it doesn't really make sense. And eventually, after hours of playing, sometimes they realize that he said yes every time that they've asked him if he had a certain hand. But
this strategy seems not be optimal. You will upset people if they realize at some point that you are lying. So probably if you said yes in the first place, you should stay consistent at this point. But always saying yes or always saying no also sounds like a good approach. But if I would choose to go down this route, I usually would follow through and continue lying or telling the truth and not change the story. Because I think this is not good for the whole environment and how the other people feel. And if people get angry or quit because they hate you, not necessarily good. By the way, my strategy at live tables, not sure if it's the optimal one, usually was to not tell people and also tell them that I'm not telling.
Something that I've always kind of wanted to do and haven't done. Hopefully you're comfortable doing it, because it does sound relaxing in those situations. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed those lessons. I'm super thankful to both Tommy and Elliot for everything they've taught me over the years. And I'm glad I could share a little bit of that with you. If you enjoyed that.
Yeah, the lessons were trivial and not helpful at all. Yeah, I hope that you still enjoyed the video. By the way, I stay to my first thought that mental coaches are useless and a waste of money based on what we learned from this video. So yeah, like, subscribe, share if you enjoyed this content. Thanks for watching. Good luck at the tables. Bye-bye.